All right. Welcome to your first post-lunch session. Thank you so much for initiatives. Prior to joining Butcherbox, Eliza served as the Associate Chief Operating and Founding Director of Operations for Uncommon Schools. She earned her doctorate and master's degree focused in education leadership from Teachers College of Columbia University. Please join us in welcoming Eliza.
All right, here's the most stressful part, which is, can you hear me? And it seems like yes. All right, you're never sure with the right microphone. All right, and we have slides. We're good to go. Let's start first. Show of hands. How many of you have a Nokia flip phone hidden somewhere in a drawer? Okay, all right, some. Not as many flip phone users as I would have thought. And of that, I would imagine that some of you thought that in 2005, the flip phone would get you all the way through to today. I know, at least for me, my flip phone was a big part of my personality, and I absolutely loved it and could not imagine the iPhone that we use today. I share that because Nokia was incredibly focused on dropped calls. They were perfecting what it meant to have perfect phone quality when you talked on your cell phone. And what that meant is that they completely missed the smartphone revolution. They were not focused on cameras. They were not focused on apps. They were not focused on any of the millions of things that you do on your smartphone today. They were focused on the call quality. And so I say that to say that today we want to talk about how our workforce doesn't become the Nokia of talent management. While we are perfecting the skills of yesterday, new jobs are being written every single day. And so we want to talk today about what it means to shape the future of the workforce, what mindsets and skills are going to matter, not just today, but in 10 years, since so much is unknown. I'm Eliza Jackson. I'm the Chief People and Administrative Officer at Butcherbox. And to just give you a little bit of background, I've had a very non-traditional career. So for any of you who has a resume that doesn't quite speak on its own, that is me. I started my career in finance in my early 20s in New York. I was an analyst. And I remember waking up like 2 or 3 years into my analyst career thinking, this cannot be what work is for the next 40 years. And that is no shade to a financial career. That is, the people were great, the work was great. It was not the right job for me. And so through a friend of a friend, I found myself observing a charter school in Brownsville, Brooklyn, for any of you who are from New York. And I spent about 15 minutes in the school, and I thought to myself, this is what I meant to do. And as someone, for the operational folks in the room, you can probably relate to this, as someone who likes to do a lot of research and be very prepared and make informed decisions, this was absolutely gut. I sat there for 15 minutes, and I was like, this is it. And I spent the next 10 years at Uncommon Schools, building and scaling schools both in New York and in Boston. So I taught a year of kindergarten, and then I moved into school operations and spent the next decade there. And as I was thinking about what I did next, we had grown pretty significantly and we're in a good scaled spot, and I wanted to start to think about, after a decade, being somewhere else. I thought I would go into youth services. And a good friend of mine, when I was getting her opinion on sort of like where to start to apply in what I thought would be more of the nonprofit world, told me that what I love are scalable operations and good people. And she was totally right. And so that led me to Butcherbox, which I remember when before I took the first interview, I thought, I know nothing about the meat business or startups or anything else. Like, this is going to be horrible. But it was the absolute opposite experience. From the first interview, I knew that those were the people I wanted to work with. And our CEO, in my very first interview, he looked at my resume, and the only thing he asked me about was the year that I had spent as a side gig, as a mindfulness teacher at a hospital on top of my regular career. And I remember thinking, okay, this is the kind of place I want to work. Like, he really read it, he thought about me. And so that is a long, winding way to say that that's brought me to Butcherbox. And what it has taught me is that I really, really believe in people, and I'm interested in their stories. And that, to me, is what is most important about the future of where the workforce is going. And so at Butcherbox, we like to say that it's the human over the hard skill. What that means is that we are focused on not only hiring, but developing and then amplifying our workforce and gearing them towards the future, which, as we can probably all agree, feels pretty uncertain right now. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today. How do you hire people that are geared towards the future? How do you retain them? And how do you amplify those folks using AI? And so to start, I reflected on this question about which skills will become essential over the next decade. As I mentioned, today is an increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. All of you know this in your current roles. And so what we know is not optional is agility and is innovation. And that is different than where we've been before. And so I want to start by talking a little bit about what has gotten us to this question around mindsets and hard skills, or humans and hard skills. So if you think back to the Industrial Revolution, so a long time ago, we measured then something called basic performance. So you can think of your generic factory line. That was very focused on process and root skills. So people worked on their own in a solo environment. They got very good at doing a specific replicable skill, and they were predominantly measured on their efficiency of being able to do that. Fast forward a few decades, and you saw contextual performance start to emerge. And contextual performance is really this shift from basic performance to where you see knowledge and collaboration as the focus. So you can think about that as collaboration across teams, alignment between managers and their employees, and championing of others. And so that is where you start to see the shift from pure hard skills to mindsets. But what happened in 2025 is a new kind of performance emerged. And I can credit, I'll talk about them later, but one of our partners, BetterUp, if any of you have used them, their research around this is amazing if you're ever interested in learning more. So this new type of performance emerges, and it's called adaptive performance. And it has three key drivers: creativity, connectivity, and agility. And what that means is that we have fully moved into a space where the most important components of an employee are around their mindsets. That's not to say that the hard skills or the technical skills don't matter. They do. But we don't know exactly what evolution or the technological advancements are going to look like over the next 10 years. And so what we do know is that people with the right mindsets are the ones who are going to be able to adapt. So if you think about that, if the three are creativity, connectivity, and agility, those three mindsets will allow people to continue to adapt, to be curious, and to learn what's coming. And so in a landscape, what businesses need most are people who want to grow and learn. That they are open to thinking about what's next, that that's exciting to them, that they want to think about their own development in relationship to that. And that's very different than the kind of performance we've been looking at in the past. And so what I think is important here, and for us at Butcherbox, the mindsets that matter most, at least internally, are adaptability, optimism, and agency. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But the reason that it's important to look at where we've come from a performance standpoint is this is a really large pivot from where we've been. Not to say that we were in a place where we were only looking at efficiency and basic performance, 3 years ago. We've certainly evolved. But this way of thinking is very, very different. And what we've seen through many companies is that people are not treating this moment like a large pivot in the workforce. But I would argue it is one of the biggest changes we will see in the way that culture and people show up at work. And so we started to look at what does this mean to really focus on optimism, self-advocacy, and resilience? And how do we help our folks both come in with deep knowledge that that's what's expected of them, that that's what we want, and then how do we coach and retain that? A few years ago, when I first started at Butcherbox, so 4 years ago, we were right on the precipice of actually losing this mindset piece. And I would say that was when you really started to see the workforce evolve in this way, at least from our culture. We'd been in a hyper growth mode. Coming out of COVID, you can imagine a meat subscription business was steadily on the rise, so much so that we had to turn off sales because we couldn't keep up with it. And we had started to hire some very seasoned executives who had the perfect resume, had the technical skills. And they weren't aligned in terms of these mindsets. And so our CEO, Mike, and I had to take a really hard look at what to do about that. And it prompted us to make some really hard calls. We did a layoff. We parted ways with some incredibly smart, thoughtful executives. And we really reinvested in what I'll talk about later called the talent factory. And for us, that means prioritizing the mindset above all else, and then radically supporting people even if they don't have the experience to grow into that role. And so we start with hiring. Through our hiring process, we have a rubric around our core values that everyone's evaluated on, gets a score on. We do feedback live in the interviews. We do role plays. Some of those are very funny. I highly encourage you to do them if you have not. People love to get into character. It's great. But you're trying to assess on the fly what candidates really possess these mindsets, especially when they're pushed and tested. And you do that before you get them in the door. And so we've made some hard calls, some maybe unpopular calls. There have been candidates who have what I would call the perfect resume, and were not either culturally aligned in terms of our core values or didn't have the mindsets or the adaptability, the optimism, the self-advocacy that we know we need. And so we haven't brought them on. And that can be risky because what you're doing is you're taking a leap of faith on people, many, many folks who have not done this before. And the last piece that I'll say about hiring is that we try hard to over-index on our culture carriers. Our culture is the most important part for us. We believe that there's a very, very clear ROI on happy people and what that means for your revenue. If you haven't used BetterUp and looked at their data, it is so interesting, but it's true. And so we over-index on hiring for the right culture carriers. We look for people who have self-advocacy, who are self-starters in the past, who have high levels of optimism. Because what that tells us is that they will be able to weather the storm and help bring others with them. Because so much of this is the attitude that you bring to work. And so for us, it really starts with hiring for these mindsets that we believe will future-proof for the workforce. And then once we get folks in, so now you've hired, hopefully, mostly all the right people. And I think this is where it becomes a shared responsibility. There is the component where folks need to own their own development, that they have to take ownership and be self-starters. And I believe that it's the company's deep responsibility to create a learning environment for the people that you bring on so that they have the container to be able to learn and grow and get better. And so first and foremost, we start by building a continuous learning container or learning environment for them. I want to talk first a little bit about this idea of talent factory, because if you've ever heard our CEO speak, he will talk about this a lot. So talent factory means a couple of things. It means, one, that while you work at Butcherbox, we want that to be the best experience for you for the time that you're there. Now that means some people will be there for 20 years. Some people will be there for 10. There may be someone who is only there for a year. But for the time that you're there, we want you to have the best career experience that you can have at your time at Butcherbox. And secondly, that we take a leap of faith on people who have the right mindset and don't always have the proven track record. And what we do is we pair them with experts in the industry so that they are able to have someone help them see around corners and help them learn what they don't know. And so if you think about that concept as we talk about the learning environment, you'll see, and I'll give some examples at the end, that requires us to really, really invest in learning and development. So to begin, at an org level, 100% of our employees have a coach. Gone are the days that only executives get coaches and that they all are so expensive that you can only afford one or two. That is just not the current climate. BetterUp is one of our biggest partners, but there are many coaching organizations that fit depending on the size of your organization, depending on whether you're in person or hybrid or remote. And we really believe that if you hire people who have a growth mindset, who are interested in growing and learning and getting better every day, and then you pair them with a coach where they can do that work, that the combination of the coach and the manager and someone with great self-advocacy, that they can accelerate their career 5x what you could if you're not giving them this kind of support. And so baseline, everyone has their own coach. The coach looks a little different if you're a brand new employee who comes in at a generalist level or if you're an executive, but we have a tiered approach so that everyone meets their employee where they are. And then from there, we use data and feedback and performance reviews to be able to create a customized development plan for each employee. And so what that means is, so there could be, I'll use a couple of examples. One employee might have a coach, and then they might like small group coaching. Maybe they're in a group of 5 or 6. They are working on change management. They're working on problem solving. For someone else, that might look like they have a couple of sessions with a really technical coach where they're just learning a new component of code. It could look like being a member of one of our high potential programs where they do a year-long fellowship. It could be a mentor within Butcherbox. We have tried truly everything. I'm thinking of one employee who really wanted to do their human design chart, and so that was like right up their alley. We found them a human design coach. It's been great. Everyone is a little bit different, and the way that you unlock them is so individualized. And so for us, the coaching environment is the best way to do that at scale, because it's not realistic to say that your one learning and development employee or your head of people is going to be able to create a customized plan for every single person. That is a lot. But if you are able to leverage external coaches, they can work in partnership with you so that you can really customize for each person. Secondly, our L&D team is a little bit different than the way you'd think of it in kind of a classic setting. So each member of my teams does some component of learning and development. So a couple of them do content creation. A couple of them provide coaching. Some of them are, building out the performance management suite. But we work hard to have this we call it baked in, not sprinkled on, which is that the learning and development is the fabric of how we operate. And so that is a big part of multiple people's jobs, not just one person's responsibility. And then the last piece I'll say is that we have every executive have a coach as well. We're really transparent about it. Our coaches come to meetings. They give us feedback. They ask for feedback from our direct reports. And we try to model top down and bottom up that every single person is really like leaning into this coaching engagement. And then I just want to give a couple of examples of what we mean by Talent Factory. And so I'll use a personal example, and then I'll walk through another one with another employee. So I'll use myself, for example. I do not have any experience in this direct role. As I told you, I came from urban education. I do not have experience in D2C. I do not have experience being the COO of a $600 million business. This is all very new to me. I make a lot of mistakes. And so over the last 4 years that I've been at Butcherbox, Mike and the team have been willing to take a chance on me. I don't have the proven track record, so that is a leap of faith. But what they have done, as long as I am committed to growing and getting better every single day as quickly as I can, is providing me with the right coaching and the right development. So over the last 4 years, I've had 3 different coaches. Is that right? Yeah, 3 different coaches. And they all served a different purpose for me. So my first coach, Libby Moore, she was actually Oprah's chief of staff back in the day, and she opened her own coaching practice. She is amazing. She is a mindset coach. She's an energy coach, and she does a lot of group coaching. So when I first started, she worked really deeply with me on some of my identity work. What was I bringing to my new leadership position? What was I bringing to our executive team? And she did some group coaching with other executives and myself. From there, as I moved from the VP of People into a more cross-operational role, we like to call her Other Libby, but I then had a coach, Libby Cole, who was a COO and chief of staff. And what I needed at that point was much more tactical coaching about the actual role. And so she would go to meetings with me. She would observe my team meetings and give me feedback. She would meet with my direct reports. She would listen to me practice an executive presentation, and we would role play. She was very, very hands-on in my work, and all of the folks that I worked with, I was transparent about what she was doing there and getting me better faster. And then most recently, as the role has broadened and we felt like I needed someone who had seen multiple companies through transition phases, Cameron Harold, who is a longtime coach and COO, he currently leads something called the COO Alliance, and he was the original COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, if you know that company. And he's an amazing hypergrowth guy. And so I've been working with him for the last 6 months. His style is very direct. He holds the mirror up to me. His favorite thing to say to me after I'll give him this long explanation of why I did something and why that was the right thing. He will say, "Did you actually do any of that?" And usually the answer is no. That is what I thought I should do. Didn't really do it. And he has just provided such direct, consistent feedback for me and has given me so much of his own expertise because he's seen businesses through this. And that's exactly what I need right now. Had you given me that coach 3 years ago, I probably would have cried, and it wouldn't have been effective. And so the evolution of my coaching journey has really depended on what I need. And the other example I'll give, and if this is either recorded or she was here, she would be rolling her eyes. Our Chief Revenue Officer, Reba Hatcher, has been at Butcherbox for 7 years. We're in year 10. And she came to us when she was in her early 20s. I think she sat on every single team that we have at some point in her journey. So she led data, she worked in customer service, and then she did a long stint as Mike's chief of staff. And a year and a half ago, when we wanted her to move into a chief revenue or chief commercial officer role, our board told us that was a bad idea. They told us that she didn't have enough experience, that she was too young, she wasn't seasoned enough, and we needed someone with a proven track record. And we said, no, don't agree. We think she has the mindsets, she has the attitude, and she has the ability and desire to grow. And as long as we can radically support her, we know she can get good enough fast enough. And that's a real risk, especially when the board tells you it's a bad idea. And it's a lot of pressure for the person. But we thought really clearly about what did she need out of coaching? Which groups should we get her in? How did she build a network with other CROs who had done this before so that they could help teach her what she didn't know? And then we trust her that she can learn fast enough. And I can't share what it is yet, but in January you'll see. But she has brought us to probably the biggest pivot our business will see in 10 years. And that is 100% because of her mindset. We had to provide the right container for her, but watching her accelerated growth curve over the last year and a half has been miraculous. And so I will tell you, if you are willing to invest in the right folks, and it does take commitment and work and time, they can shock you at what they can do. I mean, she just turned 30, and she is unbelievable. So that is my last sort of talent story. And so I will say, if you hire the right people and then you radically support them, the last piece to me is around AI, and not just hiring and developing, but how you think about amplifying your people. Obviously, AI is, I would say, the biggest buzzword currently. And we know that it's fundamentally transforming the nature of work. We know that it's exposing a growing gap between organizational ambition and human capacity. I will probably not get this stat exactly right, but it's something like 90% of CEOs, if you were to ask them on a 5-point scale, 5 being most concerned, will tell you they are a 5 on the scale concerned about what AI will do to the future of work and to their business. And only 30% of them are doing something about it. And that's not because they don't have the work ethic or they don't want to. It's because this is hard, and it's changing every single day. And so we have really leaned in to BetterUp in this way as we work through what AI looks like and how we think about amplification with our employees. And so we use the following categories, just so as we talk through this, you know. It's pilots and passengers. So pilots have pretty high agency and optimism around AI. They're curious, they are excited, they're interested to try and test and learn. And then passengers have a high level of fear and skepticism. And I say that to say it does not mean that pilots are not afraid of what AI is doing, because it is scary. That is real. I think oftentimes we talk about it that some people are magically supposed to just not be worried about how this is changing the world. That is not true. They're afraid, but they're able to figure out how to become more curious and more interested in experimenting than be paralyzed by the fear. And so our goal is to build more pilots than passengers, because what we believe is that AI can help amplify our employees, both in terms of productivity and in terms of allowing them to be focused on what only humans can do. And so we talk a lot about this transparently with our people, that AI is not going to replace our people. It's going to amplify them. And it is going to change their jobs drastically. That will happen. There is no way we can avoid that. But it doesn't mean that it eliminates their role. It changes it. And so we started by building a very small task force. It is myself with 2 engineers and 2 data scientists, and I have the technical skills of likely my grandmother, and so they are very patient with me. They are deeply in the work. They know it so well. And I really just bring the human connection for them. And we often like to say, if I can learn to do the thing, we feel confident any of the employees can. And so we've been working in 2 different categories to upskill our people. Category 1 is around, this is something you've probably seen a lot, around automated tasks and efficiency. So if you think back to that piece around basic performance, BetterUp Labs has seen an increase by 10 points in terms of people's satisfaction with basic performance in AI, which is not surprising. It helps you to automate and get more efficient 100%. And so category 1, we've been building out tools in service of our people. So the problems that we're solving come from our employees, and then this task force solves them. Some examples include a podcast tool that one of our engineers built. Part of someone's job in marketing was to take podcasts, use a rubric, go through and determine essentially what podcasts could we go on and not. And the automated tool looks at 100 podcasts in 30 seconds. It takes the rubric, it takes the brand guidelines, and it takes a voice and tone that we copied of this employee. And it will tell you in categories which podcasts are a definite yes, a definite no, or a maybe. So you can imagine for this person, this has saved her hours and hours of time, because this one tool can look at 100 podcasts in 30 seconds. I mean, that would take her a day. And so she's freed up to really dig into the podcast that might be in the middle range. She's freed up to think about other components of her influencing campaign. And so we've been trying to solve real problems for our people as a way to build some of this pilot mindset to get them more excited and curious about this. Another good example is one of our head of CS, our customer support, who deals with a lot of fraud. We built a tool where it basically like combs through all the fraud, and then it will go and actively cancel the account. The agent can cancel the account instead of the rep canceling the account. And so we're just trying to automate within our people's jobs, that identify the areas that are taking tons of time, and then release that lever for them so that they're freed up to do something else. That's category one. Category two, and I cannot take any credit for this, we're building it looks similar to ChatGPT. It's called a complex set of agents. And I was inspired by a fellow COO, Alex from Mind Valley. If you go on their iPhone, their app is on every iPhone now. He's amazing. And they had basically built out a tool that looks like ChatGPT, but it allows every individual in the company to go on and build their own agent without any technical skills. So they hard-coded the back end essentially, and they are able to teach their employees how to build their own agents for themselves, to give them the power to choose what do they want help with and how does this interact with their job. And so he showed me a couple of examples, one being in talent and recruitment, where his head of talent said that she thinks she got 40% of her work taken off by this agent that she built herself so that she could then level up to work on the strategy. And she has no technical background. When I asked Alex how long did it take her to build that, he said he thought, including the feedback loops to the agent, it took her 10 hours total. That is going to save her an amount of time over the next year. She'll get the return back in a week. And so our tech stack is a little different, but we've been copying the same concept for them and figuring out essentially how do you build. We've built it so now our employees can go in and build their own agents, and then we help them with the ones that require some level of engineering. So an example might include in marketing, we would have a copywriter and a designer, 2 agents. They can talk to each other. So I would give a prompt. The designer and the copywriter talk to each other, the 2 agents, and they produce something for me or for someone in marketing to look at. I give feedback, they go back and work together and come back to me. And so if you think about how much time that is freeing up, our current copywriters and designers are working in tandem with the AI agents. Can the agents do what a really seasoned copywriter can do? No, that's not the goal. It's to take off the lower level grind work that they're doing off their plate so that they can be leveled up working on something else. And the big piece for us here has been, as we're starting to get people more comfortable with, I would say in particular with agents, because it's a really foreign concept, and sometimes if I think too much about it, it freaks me out a little bit, is just getting them to work with it in their day-to-day work. Because the more that they can see how it allows them to level up, and that their skills are still needed, but just in a different way, the more comfortable and curious they get. And so it started with this really small group, and now it's starting to expand and more people are getting comfortable. And so we continue to tell our folks that we're using AI to upskill our people, not to eliminate their jobs, because I think the two are very, very different. And we've been clear with them, though, that AI is happening. Technology is going to continue to change. And the options are either you get more comfortable with it or it happens to you. And that does not seem like the desirable outcome. And so we are trying every day to just do 1%. And I will tell you, we make a lot of mistakes. Anyone who tells you they're doing this really well is absolutely lying because it's moving so quickly. But we're just getting ourselves more comfortable and helping to really allow our people to level up. So what I'll say in closing is that for us, this really is about humans over hard skills. And that there is a world in which if you hire the right people and you create the right container for them to grow and learn, that you can utilize AI to help them get better at their jobs, and that the two can exist in combination with one another, and that can create a really, really interesting future-proofed culture. Thank you. And then I think we're going to do a little bit of Q&A if folks have questions. I'll let them, if you have 2 minutes. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
So I might have missed it, but you were talking about the platform that your employees have access to that helps them build AI without needing to know how to build AI.
Yes.
Is that a vendor that you use, or is that something that's homegrown? How did you come up with that, and where did you find it?
Yeah, so we, the first initiative when we took this work on was to decide whether we would build it or buy it. We have built it, and what I will say is I think there are some really amazing tools out there. There are none that I have found that are a seamless integration, so you're putting a decent amount of work into getting your data in the tool in the right way to teach folks how to use it if you buy. And if you have the talent internally, so that would be, in particular, I would say, like an engineer who has a problem-solving mindset and is like curious and wants to try, their technical skills don't have to be perfect. They just have to have the right mindset. And then you do need one strong data scientist. If you have those skills, either in consulting or in employees, it's not as hard to build as you would think. And we are big believers, because I copied someone else's work in this way. If you would like to talk to any of the technical folks who worked on this, they are lovely. They would be happy to talk to anybody about this, because it can really help businesses stand up pretty fast. But it took us like 6 weeks. And this is not their full-time job at all. They're doing like 30%. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to, once you've hired someone who's new, what it looks like to get to the point where they're provided a coach, as far as how much input from the employee, the manager, what that looks like, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So we have people start pretty early on in terms of coaching. BetterUp's platform, it depends a little bit on the profile of the person. So I would say for a leader, we spend a bit more time getting to deeply understand what their growth areas are. So we can determine whether we use a BetterUp coach or whether we have a small base of coaches that are have their like own businesses. And so we want to get to know their development path a little bit more. For anyone who's using a BetterUp coach, what's amazing about it is that you can think of it a little bit like speed dating. So when you log in, you take a very long whole person assessment as part of your onboarding to BetterUp. And they then, based on this assessment, recommend 3 different coaches for you. You can see their profile, you can see other people that they've coached, what they're best at, and you can schedule an intro call. And what I think is amazing about them is they've really normalized that you should go through as many intro calls until you find the right person. So, and coaches are very used to that. It was one of the things that we saw that was really tricky about having only coaches that we directly employed, because I found myself sometimes trying to push a coach on someone and it wasn't quite the right fit, but I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I wanted them to be at the right hours. And this, totally takes that guesswork out of it. So employees come in, they do this whole person assessment, they basically can choose. And the nice part is if you decide a year in or 6 months in that what you're working on has changed a bit, you can change coaches. So then we use basically quarterly feedback and annual reviews to indicate anything else that people would work on with their coaches based on like manager input. And they take those development goals back to their coach and it sort of shapes it. And then we give both BetterUp and any of our other internal coaches our strategic plan, our core values, anything else like that's important to the business, so they have a really nuanced container around it, because I think to us we've seen the greatest success when you know the employee well and when the coach knows the business well. That can sometimes be the disconnect, is if you're not really good about information sharing. Sometimes the coaching is like a little too broad. But we do start people right away. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. Super helpful. I have 2 questions for
Yes.
you. First question is, I totally heard you around you either use AI or it'll use you. And part of that conversation, we are often also hearing a lot of equity and justice-based
Yes.
thinking around ethical AI
Yes.
and what that looks like. And so we don't want to be left, but we're also asking, if we are going to use AI, what's like some equity or justice-based criteria that we should be looking at to bring in AI? So question around that if you have an answer.
Absolutely.
And then my second question for you is, you did a really awesome job helping us understand how to hire the people with the mindsets we need to evolve as a workforce. But what does it look like to work with your current workforce who is already there and might not have the mindset and might not want to leave? What does that look like?
Yeah, those are both great questions. You know, the first, I really appreciate you raising that, because I think both in terms of an equity lens and an environmental lens, it is very real that the way that the technology is moving forward can cause significant impact. And so I think, one, just being really transparent about what we know, what isn't working, what is working, and what are we worried about, and just trying to own that with employees. We try, to the best of our ability, to be radically transparent. We show all of our financials. We have something called Trust Tree, which is basically that we show all information to our employees with the expectation that they won't bring it outside the room. So I think, one, just naming it. And then 2, our DEI committee, that is a combination of our employees and then 2 of our executive sponsors. They have worked with our AI task force to set up some governance around what equity looks like and the relationship between what we're building and our equity guidelines and that rubric. I will tell you, it is not perfect, though. And so I think, to me, that is one of the areas that I'm most worried about. And so I think, to the extent that we can just, one, continue to name it, continue to build the tools alongside so that there's always that equity lens, and then try to just take the feedback and refine as fast as possible. That's the best I got, but I agree with you and share the same worry. And then 2, yes, this one, it was not easy, I will give you that. You know, when I came into Butcherbox, we were at an interesting inflection point where I would say some of the folks who had gotten us to this point were not the right people to get us to the next phase. And that is hard, because it means you either are going to, you know, terminate them or you're going to coach them out. There is a rare set in that category, and I can think there actually, we have a group of employees who have been with us the entire time at Butcherbox, so it'll be 10 years. Actually, and one is one of our most senior leaders. But there's a group of people who, if you provide them the right coaching and the right container, will get there. Like, they just want to continue to grow and get better. Those people should absolutely stay with you until they don't want to anymore. If there are folks where the mindset is no longer aligned and you feel like you've done everything you can in terms of setting the container, then to me, the best, most empathetic thing you can do is have the direct conversation. It's incredibly uncomfortable. It's not fun. But I will tell you what is worse is to keep people on who are not aligned. It is not good for them, and it is not good for the business. They feel it. It's incredibly anxiety producing. You know it. And at a certain point, the conversation is warranted. And so we had, I would say, a year where we did a lot of those conversations, and that was really, really hard. And what you see now on the other side of it is because the culture is really, really clear and the mindsets are clear, we don't have to do much out counsel anymore, because typically now if it's not a fit, it's pretty clear to the person and the company, and so you can just have that conversation and it doesn't have to be harder than that, but it takes time. And what we try to say is just like show up with, my coach always says, treat the person like you would a parent or a close next of kin, and it's true, show up with love and empathy, and also clear as kind and be direct as possible. Yeah. Yes.
So along your, what you were talking about with mindset, is there any tool specifically you use in the screening process that you felt like really helped to identify the mindset?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we, a couple of things that we use. One, our core values rubric and the questions in our interview process that are tied to that. Those work pretty decently. So every person who interviews someone at Butcherbox uses the same rubric and set of questions. And so what you have at the end of it is a comprehensive data set and score with all the narrative comments around what the entire interview team thought in terms of each of our core values. And I will say our core values are, I know it depends on the company. Some, it's like, it's a poster on a wall. For us, it is truly the way we operate. So having that level of feedback from every person who interviews a candidate gives you a really good pulse. And then this may just be my education background, so open to feedback on this. I really think role play works. I think if you stress test enough, if you give somebody feedback or you give them different scenarios and it's moving really fast, I think you can see if there's something in there where that's going to come out. Like you can start to see some red flags around feedback. And one of my coaches gave me this push, which I like a lot. If you ask someone, one of those questions around like, what's the most salient feedback you've gotten, or what are you working on now? And they give you a fluff answer. You keep asking the question in a different way until they give you something real. And if the person won't give you something real, it's a little flag to me. Like you want to know. Everybody's working on something. Nobody's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yes. Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Your speech was excellent. I just want to go back to your analogy about the pilots versus the passengers. Do you have an air traffic controller working with you? I think
love
that's really
that.
important when you're working with AI, considering there's a lot of like contingencies to consider, like model degradation. I can't speak right now. I'm so sorry. I'm fighting a headache.
Up here, so please.
But and like AI bias, like we had mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Have you ever attempted to use AI for a specific task and learned that it didn't work for this, and like just decided never again with AI on this task, or not until like way in the future when it works better?
Yes to all of those things. One, I really like the air traffic controller. That's awesome. I will totally take that. That's great. Yes, our project manager, so there's a woman who runs our business operations and transformation team underneath me. And under that sits some of our project managers. They, I would say, function in a way that's a little different than sort of your typical PM. And so we have some senior folks who are very operational but do a lot of business strategy. And so we have one of them who has a technical background on all of the AI work. And so I would call her the air traffic controller. She basically is making sure that through the task force, through the DEI group, through the experiments, because certainly we've had things that we've tried where we're like, whoa, that was not it. We're not ready. We don't know how. So like, how do you document those learnings and write them down and figure out when you pick it back up? She has been amazing at tying all those pieces together. But I think in that role, you have to have someone who really, really understands the business and really understands your culture. I don't think you can put a purely internal operations person on that. Like they have to get the context because it's nuanced. But yeah, I love that. I totally agree. Yeah.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
very much. Appreciate it. First of all, kudos to you and your company. For everyone to have a coach is pretty incredible. So I'm not sure I know another organization that does that. So that's fantastic. And it sounds like, to me, based on what you said, you create a culture where people can make mistakes and learn and grow, which is also incredible. I guess my question here is, help me to understand, or can you speak a little bit more to the coachee to employee relationship, right? I assume there's some level of confidentiality between that. And so how do you as a business, right, use that feedback, right, that they get at the end of the day to make company decisions? Because you are still a business, you still need to grow, right? And so how do you balance those two? I'd love to hear more perspective on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
BetterUp has been a real game changer for us in this, and honestly, having a coaching for all model, because I think one of the things that's tricky when you have a small number of people who are getting coached is it's very hard to get feedback from the coaches and have it be anonymous, almost impossible. So on BetterUp, they have a people analytics dashboard. So you basically you can log in, you can see your allocation of who's assigned to what coaches. And then they have an analytics team where you can look at trend level data. So you're not drilling in. I can't see, for example, I couldn't click in and see, okay, Matt met with his coach, they talked about XYZ. I can't see any of that, which we want, because we want that relationship to really be separate from Butcherbox. We want them to be able to feel like they can share total confidential information and it would never get back to me or to the executive team or manager. But what's awesome is by being able to see the trend level data, and those are tied to mindset, so you can see, you set the mindsets, but it's basically optimism, adaptability, resilience, et cetera. You can see they take these surveys periodically throughout their coaching to track, and you can sort of look at how they're doing, what topics they're most interested in, and it's based on what the coach can report and what they can report. And then for us, we are in a pilot with them where for those of you who use Workday and use Peakon and the employee voice component of Workday, BetterUp and Peakon have an API now. So I can look at all of my employee level data with the coaching data on top of it. And that's really helpful because I can essentially start to figure out in what departments are there mindset flags? Is there, under one manager, is there something that's going on? Is there something about a strategic initiative? And all of that's anonymous. And then what we do is for the coaches that we use that are not through BetterUp, we just set the container with the person up front about how we're gonna touch back on it, and everybody's a little bit different. So for me, I really like having my coach be able to know my direct reports, to see me in action, et cetera. So we set up that he meets with them once a quarter, gets feedback from on me, shares what we're working on, et cetera. And then for some other folks, we agree okay, we'll touch back around the annual review to figure out what are the goals and monitor progress. But those are just harder to remain anonymous.
We have some questions from the live stream.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
First, my question is how the legal aspect of this approach impacts the organization.
Yeah.
Role-playing, testing for culture, fit, et cetera, can be considered a potential risk. What are the processes or proven approach to mitigate this?
Yes. Okay, so specifically around AI, and I will not speak for her because she is the expert, but our GC is amazing and both our person from cyber and our GC sit in all of this work and make sure that they are sort of putting in the right controls that I would definitely miss. In terms of the questions around hiring, we are just incredibly transparent with people about what the interview process will look like and how it will be used. That is always our baseline way of operating. So our CEO is radically transparent. We try to model the same. So we tell people up front in the interview process, these are things that you can expect. We give them the opportunity, if they have feedback, if there's something uncomfortable, so that they know. And then everything is tracked through our talent management system and then through Workday. And so we're using the same question bank, the same rubrics, the same interview prep, so that that's all standardized and lives in our actual HRIS. But I would say we err on the side of being really open with people, and that's really helped throughout the interview process.
And then the second question is, how would you handle it if you inherited a workforce that had a different type of mentality? This example is through an acquisition.
Yes, that is a hard one. That was absolutely true in the role that I was in prior to Butcherbox, and it's tricky. I think the most important part is being really clear with the new team around the culture that you're going to set and drive and what the expectations are. It can be easy to shy away from that because that can lead to pretty hard conversations. But in my opinion, it is better to be as direct and transparent with them so that they know exactly what to expect from you. I think with that, what you see baseline first is there will be some people who your leadership style or the culture you're building or the goals that you're setting may not align. And so they may opt out if you've made it very clear. And then I would use the same framework we use for our internal employees, which is that for folks that you see have the right mindsets, really lean into coaching, really lean into development. And for folks where they have not opted out and you don't think that they're the right fit, to give yourself enough data to understand and make that call, give them the benefit of the doubt that you're starting again. And if you're clear about what you want and that you can work together, hope that they can get there. And if not, make the hard call. I think people will often fall into this trap of it's harder to part ways than it is to keep the person on. And I actually don't agree with that. I think both are very hard. Both are hard paths. They're just different paths. And so to the extent that you can be empathetic and kind and direct and honest with them, my opinion is it's better for both the employee and for the organization to have folks that are aligned to where you're going. Awesome.
I think we've got time for probably one more question.
What are some books in your internal book club or that have influenced you personally and professionally that you would recommend?
This is one that has just gotten me through I'm thinking specifically of when I was going to grad school at night and working full time, and I would be on the subway just in a terrible state. I think I read Oprah's The Things I Know for Sure 100 times that year. It's these little excerpts. They're all 1 to 3 pages long. They're built out by, actually thinking back, they're built out to different mindsets like resilience and optimism. So I guess that was foreshadowing. But I think they're a great way to just get a quick hit of inspiration if you need a little pick-me-up or you need some guidance and you're having either a great day or a hard day. And then we've used Founder's Mentality internally. I see some nodding that other people have read that. I think that's been great for us as we try to figure out how do we keep our entrepreneurial spirit but continue to build process and systems around it. And then the last plug I would give is Cameron Harold, who's my coach, obviously, but he has a couple of books that are amazing. One is called Meetings Suck. If you have a meeting problem, read it. Do the things in the book. It really helps. Turns out meetings don't suck. It's the way that we run them. But any of his books, what I like about them is they're just very practical. And I think sometimes Like business books can be tricky because you read them and you come away and you're like, this is all great theory. I don't really know what to do tomorrow. And I think they give some good tangible examples. And then just on, like in my personal life, I can't stop reading Kristen Hanna, but those are not going to help you with your work. I just think they're really good. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you so much. I really.
All right. Thank you, Eliza. That was lovely and so helpful. If you agree or don't agree or have any feedback whatsoever, on your tables, you will see a QR code to do a speaker survey. This is super, super helpful for them in getting feedback and planning for future conferences. So please take a moment and share your feedback. It is break time. Take a half hour. The next set of sessions start at 2 o'clock.